Thank you, General Milley. I think what we'll do, Senator Reid and I feel we can start with 5-minute questions, and we're going to try to adhere to that time frame because we have a lot of interest here, as you can see by the presence of these people. I've got 3 things I want to make sure that we get out at the very beginning of this of the meeting. First of all, I wish the entire country could read this article from The Economist. I know you've seen it. We talked about it in the office. But in that article, it reports that China's military spending rose by 83% in real terms between 2009 and 2018. At the same time frame, between 2010 and 2015, our defense was actually cut just under 25%. Now, you stop and think about that. We had a similar experience a few years ago, but not to this extreme. We've seen the impact, as you have said before this committee, last March as recently. Our military advantages has eroded. In some areas, China has passed us up. You know, when you talk to the American people, there's always this assumption that America has the very best of everything. And this is pretty much true back since World War II. But it's not true anymore. And we're pulling out of I call it a slump, but we have areas like hypersonics. Hypersonics, the modern thing that we're all in competition with. And there's some doubt as to whether or not we have come as far as both China and Russia. We look at the advanced cruise missiles. We look at some areas of our artificial intelligence, and our readiness has devastated just as well. When you became Chief of Staff, only 5% of the Army brigades were at the highest level of readiness. But now we've improved a lot. We're up to 50%. You might correct me if you think this is not accurate, but I think that is significant. But it shows that if we don't get a budget that will support the growth that we have experienced in fiscal years 18 and 19, it would be pretty devastating. So I'd like to start off with your sharing with us what would happen in your mind if we're not able to get a budget deal, if we had to go into a CR.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the impact would be significant. I think a CR is, in the words of the NDS Commission, they said the word reckless. I think a CR is a very significant negative impact on the training, manning, equipping, the readiness and modernization of the U.S. military.
You know, we have, and we've stressed this, and we're using our subcommittees where they're all chaired by and with ranking members and chairmen, people with people with the real interest in these areas. And I'd pointing out the areas that, when you look at the entire joint force across air, sea, land, cyber, and space domain, what current capabilities and emerging technologies are you most concerned about relative to China and Russia? Well,
candidly, I think the very number one for me and number one stated for the Department of Defense is the modernization, the recapitalization of the nation's nuclear triad. I think that's critical. Secondly, I would say is space. It's a new domain of military operations. We've got a considerable amount of both commercial and military capabilities in space. They need to be protected in all of the technologies that go with space. In addition to that, I would say that artificial intelligence and hypersonics, and there's many other technologies. Those 2 are at the top of my list for putting modernization investment.
Yeah, back up to the triad, because there are some with the idea that there's unnecessary redundance. Would you respond to that observation that some people have made?
Yeah, my view is that the triad has worked. I mean, there's many reasons why there hasn't been a great power war since 1945. Clearly, one of them is nuclear deterrence. Yeah. And part of that is the capability of the triad. And each leg of the triad gives you a different capability. So you got the bombers, the missiles, and the subs. And the subs are going to give you assured second strike, and the missiles give you immediate reaction, and the bombers give you a manned, controlled delivery system. So all 3 present different problem sets to any adversary or enemy, and I think it's critically important to keep all 3.
Agreed. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is we have a lot of vacancies right now. And in fact, you and I went over that from Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary of Defense, Chief Management Officers, the top 12 positions are vacant now. How much of a hardship is that going to place on you? And do you join most of us up here who feel we need to fill these positions?
I think it's very important to fill the nominated positions and get them through the system as quickly as we can, properly vetted and confirmed. But having a confirmed person in place, I think clearly helps out us in uniform. And it also clearly delineates, you mentioned civilian control of military. I think it reinforces that because the civilian oversight is of critical importance and they interface with Congress and other interagencies. So I think filling those positions is really important.
Thank you. Senator Reid.